Hello, everyone. Great, sound works. We're off to a good start here. All right. Thank you, Ms. Sandy, for that introduction. I want to thank, first and foremost, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for thinking that I was worthy of salvation and grace, and for saving a wretch like me. Honestly, I really understand the full meaning of that. Then I would like to thank the VFW for actually allowing me to be here today. Because believe it or not, Minnesota, even their churches, your churches, a lot of them don't even want to hear my testimony and won't even allow me to walk through the door to talk to them. Pastors are closing doors and won't listen. Yes. Thank you all for being here today, and specifically, veterans, could you raise your hands, please? I owe my life to y'all. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And then I'd like to thank my husband for allowing me to be here today. He works very hard for our family, and he's very strong in his faith. And because of his convictions, he makes it possible for me to be able to go out and speak to fantastic citizens like yourself. Thank you. Yes. He's a swell guy. I think I'll keep him around. All right. So I just want to do a short little reading out of Ezekiel 37. وفيما كنت أتنبأ كما أمرت حدث صوت جلبة وزلزلة فتقاربت العظام كل عظم إلى عظمه واتست بالعصب واللحم وبسط عليها الجلد إنما لم يكن فيها روح فقال لي تنبأ للروح يا ابن آدم وقل هذا ما يأمر به السيد الرب هيا يا روح أقبل من الرياح الأربع وهب على هؤلاء القتلى ليحيوا فتنبأت كما أمرني الرب فدخل فيهم الروح فدبت فيهم الحياة وانتصبوا على أقدام جيشا عظيما جدا جدا. Everybody caught that? All right. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds, and breathe into the slain, and they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. They came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. It's a very interesting chapter of the Old Testament, as is much of the Old Testament. I know some people believe that this is literal, that he went up to these dry bones, and they came together, and a vast army came up in obedience to what he was commanding them in the name of the Lord, because he was saying the will of the Lord. Other people believe that this is just symbolic of people that were dead spiritually, and because of this command, they became alive spiritually again. However you look at it, it is pretty cool that the Lord can bring the dead back to life. And this is what I really want you guys to keep in mind, because 3 or 4 years ago, if you would have asked me what we should do in Islamic countries, I would have said nuke them. Not going to lie to you, that's the truth. Take them out of their misery. Take the rest of the world out of their misery also, because of them. But today, after the Lord's been working on me for 3 very long years, I can tell you that my goal, what I want, is for Ishmael to come home. What I want is for Muslims to be dead to sin. That's what I want. I want out of them, the spiritually dead, for an army to rise for Christ. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this presentation. All right, I need my tech team here. Charlie, Singer, what's coming on? Let's see if this TV will come back to life. All right, here it is. Yes, all right, if you have any Jesus allergies, please keep your EpiPens handy because they will get triggered. All right? Make sure you know where the safe zone is. All exits at all times, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, my name is Farah Prudence, and I was born to a Muslim father from Hebron, Israel. He's Palestinian, and a Rum Orthodox mother from Bethlehem, and she's also Palestinian. So how many people know anything about the Rum Orthodox Church? They don't serve rum for communion. I know what y'all are thinking. Okay, the Rum Orthodox Church is actually one of the earliest churches started by St. Peter and St. Paul. Okay, and they were nearly exterminated by the first invasion of Islam into the Holy Land. You remember the Crusades that happened that the former president was constantly trying to say is a mark of shame on the history of Christianity. Those Crusades took place because the church took its own sweet time, 400 years of rape, pillaging, and murder that happened in the Holy Land to the Jews and the Christians before the church sent out those armies. By no means am I saying that the Crusaders were sinless, but the Crusades themselves were a defensive war. All right? It was a defensive force. So my parents met in Jordan, and they wanted to get married. Both of their families actually said, absolutely not, we will not agree to this. So my parents eloped to California, got married there at a mosque, at a church. Super romantic, forbidden love story. The agreement was they would coexist, all right? That there's going to be a Christmas tree in the house, that they're also going to celebrate Eid. Eid is their holiday, right? After Ramadan, there's Eid, and then there's Eid al-Adha, where they slaughter the sheep as Abraham slaughtered the sheep instead of Isaac. Well, unfortunately, that was not what happened. So by the time my mom was pregnant with their third child, I was their first. By the time my mom was pregnant with their third child, my dad had said, if you do not convert to Islam, I'm going to take the kids and I'm going to leave you and we're going to go back to the Middle East. Now, up until this point, this is a typical story of a woman who's not a Muslim marrying into Islam. It's all romance and love and fantastic stuff at the beginning, and then the conversion and the abuse takes place. Now, by this point, understand, slowly but surely, the crosses were taken down from the house. She was not allowed to pray in the house. There was no Bible in the house, but it was a slow transition. And if you would like some more information about it, she's actually a published author. It's called Frozen Tears. It's an interesting story. I recommend it. It's not only because I'm in it. All right. So here I am. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be yoked together with the unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Isn't that what we're all told today? Coexist, love thy neighbor, accept everybody. Well, I don't prescribe to that belief. This is myself. When I was here in the United States, I was about 6 years old when my dad took us to the Middle East. I was 5 years old when my mom took me, with my dad, of course, to a mosque in Florida, where she was not only converted into Islam, but instead of the imam, who is kind of like a pastor, only not, but instead of him saying, just say Shahada, how many people know what the Shahada is? All right, the Shahada is the actual statement that a person has to say in order to become a Muslim. And the statement is, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Of course, you have to say it in Arabic most of the time. So instead of saying the Shahada, the Imam asked my mother to deny Christ. I asked my mom about this moment. I said, how could you deny Christ? And she said, that wasn't the plan. I was just supposed to say the Shahada, and I told myself that, oh well, I'll always have Christ in my heart. This will just be, just my lips talking. It doesn't mean anything. Well, to me, that was the moment that my mom officially took us out of God's kingdom and squarely into the deceiver's kingdom. That's when she signed us up for that. So my mom had my sister, and after that had a brother, so she had 4 kids before we moved to the Middle East. My dad moved us to Jordan when I was 6 years old. I did not just experience culture shock in terms of I no longer have Fruit Loops and cream cheese or running water at a tap, except for 2 days a week, actually. We got it 2 days a week. I was also no longer an individual. I also no longer had a voice. My dad's, your regular brand of mental and psychological abuse escalated to physical abuse, not just towards my mom, but also towards the 4 kids, and later on when she had my baby sister, towards the 5 kids. And the difference is that when you're in Jordan, a country that is considered a moderate Islamic country, as a woman, you have basically no rights as a Muslim woman. If you're a Christian convert, you're ranked even less than that. And then the daughter of a Christian convert, well, you guys do the math. Let me tell you one story, actually. I was raised in Sunni Islam, all right? 85% or more of Muslims around the world are actually Sunni Muslims, all right? So you can say we were the mainstream Muslims. And in Sunni Islam, you are not allowed to beat your wife on the face. Everywhere else is okay. On the first day of Ramadan, one time, Ramadan is their holy month, my dad beat my mother to a pulp. It's one of the many times that he did. And this time he got her face pretty well. So, excuse me, I'm just going to do this. So she thought, well, this time I'm going to get justice. I'm going to go to the imam, the sheikh in the mosque, and he's going to get me justice. She goes to the imam and says, yeah, imam, look at what my husband did to me. The imam is furious, all right? And he says, how dare he do this? He tells the guard, go and get him, and if he won't come, drag him by the ear. All right, so imams and sheikhs in mosques actually have political power, and in Islamic countries can throw people into jail, prison. They can communicate sentences on them. They have full rights. They are not the equivalent of a Christian pastor or a Jewish rabbi. My dad came in, and the sheikh says, how could you do this to your wife on the first day of Ramadan? Have you no fear of Allah? And my dad looks and says, yeah, sheikh, oh sheikh, she's a Christian convert and she cursed Allah's name on the first day of Ramadan and I just lost it. Yeah. The sheikh looks at my mom and says, go home. Can't do anything for you. So, as a 10-year-old living in this, by the way, wildly moderate Islamic family, my dad's family is what you would count as a non-practicing Muslim family. They're Muslims by name only. Okay, I did not grow up in any kind of stringent family. They're actually extremely westernized. I was 10 years old and I was sick and tired of my dad calling us pigs. I was sick and tired of being told that I came from a filthy womb. So I decided that I was going to win my father over. Just like any 10-year-old, right? Always striving to get our parents' love, especially a girl with her dad. So the only way for a Muslim woman to be considered righteous is for her to become a devout Muslim, an obedient Muslim to Allah and Muhammad. So I decided I was going to start wearing the hijab, which I did. I started to do the 5 prayers a day. I started fasting on days that I wasn't supposed to be fasting. I started to become a devout Muslim. I started to read the Quran, the Seerah, and the Hadith. That is the trilogy in Islam. All right? These are the 3 holy books of Islam. The Quran is what Muslims believe to be word for word what Allah told Muhammad through Gabriel. The Hadith is everything that Muhammad and his close people said. The Seerah is basically the biography of Muhammad. All right, we know everything we possibly can about the person of Muhammad. And why is that important? It's because the Quran, 91 times in the Quran, Allah tells Muslims to obey and follow the example of Muhammad. All right, Muhammad is the perfect man to them. So here's what I learned. If you want, you can direct your attention over there to that screen because I'm going to go through these as fast as possible. If you want to take down some notes, if you left your email at the front, or if you want to sign up later, I will send you this presentation. If you don't want to write it down real fast, I will also send you some more resources that are going to be of excellent use to you. All right, everything that I have in this presentation is copied and pasted straight from Islamic websites. I do not use anything that I translate by myself, which I am fluent in Arabic and I can translate it, but I always try to be very fair to them. So the Quran is taken from Quran.com. Chapter 4, verse 34. Men are in charge of women by what Allah has given one over the other, and what they spend from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in their husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. So everything that's in between brackets here, like these, this was added in by the people who translated and put up Quran.com in order to better explain what the Quran is saying. So there are a couple of things, 3 things that we learned from this verse. 1, men are in charge of women. So when people tell you that Saudi's actually hijacking Islam by having a woman be under complete control of her husband or father or son, that's a total lie. All right? It's very clear over here that men are in charge of women. Number 2, the only women that are considered righteous are those who are obedient. They're obedient to who? Their husbands, Allah and Muhammad. Number 3, your women that you fear arrogance, not your women who have already, done you wrong, not the women who have already were already flippant to you, but the women who you think, men, if you think she's about to get out of line, this is what you can do to her. And notice how it says, strike them, which means beat them. And when do you stop the beating? When they become obedient again. So if they do not become obedient again, what do? You keep beating them. Ladies and gentlemen, honor violence and honor killings, straight from the Quran. Chapter 33, verse 59. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to bring down over themselves part of their outer garments that is more suitable, that they will be known and not abused. And ever is Allah forgiving and merciful. Minnesota just voted in a woman that wears a hijab. Yeah. And she's the first woman that wears the hijab in Congress, wears any kind of head covering. We've had Jews in Congress for a long time now, and I've never heard a peep about them wanting to wear their religious coverings in Congress. But Islam's got to make it known when they're in there. We're here and they're loud and they're proud. So a lot of people say that, I'm not sure if any of you followed the Women's March with Linda Sarsour. They were giving out hijabs at the Women's March, and Western women were wearing the hijab. National Women's Day, Muslim organizations go out to schools and have little girls wear hijabs. And they'll tell you, oh, it's a sign of modesty and a sign of piety. What does Allah tell us about the hijab here? It's not a sign of piety and a sign of modesty. It is a way for a Muslim woman to distinguish herself from a non-Muslim woman in order for her not to be abused. The natural question is, who would be the abuser? Muslim men. It is not allowed for Muslim men to harass in any way, in a sexual way or in a physical way, a Muslim woman who is obedient to Allah and Muhammad. However, they are allowed to do that to non-Muslim women. This is why when Europe has been importing, and the United States and Canada has been importing these men who have grown up on these verses, well, she's asking for it because she's not covered up. This is what she wants. I'm not excusing their behavior, but for goodness sake, you cannot jump into the tiger's cage and then blame the tiger for biting you. That's what the tiger does. Quran chapter 2, verse 282, and bring two witnesses from among your men, and if there are not 2 men available, then a man and 2 women from those whom you accept as witnesses. 2 things that we learn from this verse, ladies and gentlemen. 1, the testimony of a woman is half that of a man. I learned this on the hard way. The second thing is that there are people whose witness is apparently not accepted, because it says of those whom you accept as witnesses. So who is it that they don't accept as witnesses? Non-Muslims. When Sharia, Islamic Sharia, comes to the West, and it already is right here, and when they, well, I hate to say that, if they take over an area, and they have taken over areas in the United States, the witness of non-Muslims is no longer valid in their courts. All right? And how
how did I felt firsthand this verse. Between the time I was about 7 years old and the time I was 12, my dad's brother and my dad's maternal uncle helped themselves to my 7 and 12-year-old body with sexual molestation and rape. And I was about 9 or 10 years old when I told my dad about what was going on in great intimate detail that he kept asking me for details. And nothing happened. Nothing changed. My uncle was still allowed to come to our house. We were still sent to my grandmother's house where he lived, of course, for sleepovers. And everybody turned a blind eye. As a matter of fact, a few times, my aunts walked in right when it was happening. They said their piece and left. Of course, they said their piece had nothing to do with what was going on. They just gave an update. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you this one story. Go to this page. Sorry, I didn't have a bookmark on here. One day in 1997, I was sitting in shock in the passenger seat of our silver Volvo when a man tapped on my window, shaking me out of my stupor. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" "No, thank you, I'm okay." I moved myself to the driver's seat and then saw that my blue jean dress was all bloodied. The blood must have dripped from my face because it felt damp. I thought my nose was bleeding. I felt a searing pain on my upper lip. When I wiped it with my hand, my brain started racing to recall what had happened. When I heard a soft voice talking, I looked back and saw my 4-year-old son, Shaggy, in the back seat. He was crumpled up in the fetal position with his arms hugging his knees, and he asked, "Are you going to die?" "No, I'm okay, honey. I'm not going to die." Although my lip hurt when I talked, I tried my best to speak in a clear voice. That was my mother and my brother at the time in Jordan, after my dad beat her to a pulp because she told his mother that she was pregnant and that her pregnancy was planned. She was 9 weeks pregnant when he did that to her. And he left her in the car. I remember this specifically because my uncle was having a good time with me in a bedroom when my aunt walked in and said, "Oh, there was a party on the 7th circle." My dad left my mother by the 7th circle. That's how they named their traffic circles. She opened the door and said that, and then closed the door and walked away. That's what they called it when I was a kid, when my dad beat my mom. It was a party. Yeah. Quran chapter 4, verse 24. And married women except those, and also prohibited to you are all married women except those your right hand possesses. Let's stop right here. You know why I put it in red? It's because Muslim men are not allowed to marry Muslim women, or not allowed to marry women who are married unless they are slaves. If you own a slave woman who is married, it's okay for you to marry her because her marriage is nullified because she's a slave. Muslim men are allowed to have as many sex slaves as they would like. They are only allowed to get married to 4 women at a time. If they want to marry more, they have to divorce one and marry another one. But they can own as many slaves as they want to own. As a matter of fact, the perfect man, Muhammad himself, owned at least 3 sex slaves that we know about. One of them was Mary the Copt. She was the only one to bear him a son. She was gifted to him from Egypt, and his son died as a child. We don't know why. We assume it was sickness, back then. But Muhammad himself had at least 3 sex slaves, was married to at least 11 women at the same time. Of course, I just said it's not allowed to marry except 4 women at the same time. Allah makes special provisions for Muhammad constantly in the Quran. Muhammad wants it, Allah makes it happen. Quran chapter 65, verse 4. And those who no longer expect menstruation among your women, if you doubt, then their period is 3 months. And also for those who have not yet menstruated. Let's delve into this pretty little verse. This is a verse about divorce. I told you, there are laws for everything in Islam. It is a complete way of life. It is not a religion. It's a political system. And it's very authoritarian. So what does this say? If you divorce your wife, she has to wait 3 months before she can marry another guy. And it's totally fair, and here's why. Because they didn't have Who's Your Daddy kits back then. So they have to wait 3 months to make sure she's not pregnant by her first husband. If a woman is pregnant, the verse goes on to say that she has to give birth. After she gives birth, she can marry another guy. Now, where does my problem lie? My problem lies with the little red letters that I have up there. And also for those who have not yet menstruated. He's saying if you divorce a girl who has not yet menstruated, she also has to wait 3 months. Well, the natural question is, if Muslims continue to tell us that you're not allowed to have child brides in Islam, well then how come Allah makes provisions for divorcing a girl who has not yet menstruated? Right? If you're divorcing her when she hasn't hit puberty, it means you married her when she hasn't hit puberty, which means you had sexual relations with her before she hit puberty, and that's why you need to wait 3 months to make sure she didn't get pregnant. And the perfect man, Muhammad, did marry a 6-year-old girl. Her name was Aisha. She was his best buddy's daughter. As a matter of fact, Abu Bakr, her father, who was the first Khalifa of Islam, pleaded with him, said she was too young. So Muhammad, because he's merciful and sweet, waited till she was 9 before he consummated the marriage. Alright, I told you earlier that all of the sources that I use are 100% Islamic scripture. All 4 schools of Islam agree that the hadith coming from Bukhari and coming from Muslim are 100% true. Bukhari and Muslim are simply the names of the 2 guys that compiled the hadith books. So Bukhari, volume 5, book 58, number 236, Khadija, Muhammad's first wife, died 3 years before the Prophet departed to Medina. He stayed there for 2 years or so, and then he married Aisha when she was a girl of 6 years of age, and he consummated the marriage when she was 9 years old. Yes. Bukhari, volume 7, book 72, hadith 777. This is also repeated in Sahih Muslim, book 2, hadith 64. Y'all, you can Google this. You can simply take this part, put it into Google, and it'll pop up on Islamic websites. 5 are the acts quite akin to the fitra, or 5 are the acts of fitra: circumcision, shaving the pubes, cutting the nails, plucking the hair under the armpits, and clipping the mustache. Let's focus on the first one and leave the rest of the group seats. Circumcision. Now, in all fairness, when I was raised in the Middle East for 10 years, we had Islamic lessons, of course, all the time. Arabic classes were basically Islamic classes. And what I was taught was that circumcision for boys was mandatory. Okay, it's called fard in Islam. The circumcision of girls is mustahab. It's preferred. Now, going back and studying up for presentations and studying up for other things, I found out actually, no. Circumcision over here, it says it's pretty much mandatory. It's fitra. Fitra, the best way to translate fitra, it's the natural way that humans should be. So Muslims actually believe that everybody is born Muslim, and then your parents corrupt you into Judaism, Christianity, atheism, whatever it is that you follow. And that's why, I don't know if any of you have heard the term revert. Has anybody heard that? All right. This new trend is for Muslim converts, people who convert to Islam, to call themselves reverts. And that's because they believe they were born Muslims, they're just reverting back to their natural state of being. And for those people who have a problem with circumcision in general, we can talk about circumcision of boys later, but can we please not equate the Judeo-Christian circumcision of boys with circumcision of girls? Because it is not equal, all right? Circumcision of girls is the equivalent of cutting off the boy's penis. They cut off the clitoris of the girls, and sometimes they show the girls shut, just to be sure. The reason they practice circumcision is to make sure that the girls are not able to experience sexual pleasure, and therefore in their minds they think that that's going to keep her modest and pious and keep her from being promiscuous. Now this procedure, when it's done in the Middle East and other places around the world, can be done with a dull knife. Over 99% of the time, there's no anesthesia. It can happen on girls that were just born all the way up until they're in their teenage years. They're forced to do it. They have no say in it whatsoever. causes infections, it causes death, it causes major psychological trauma. And just recently, in the land of the free, Muslim doctors in Michigan were caught performing circumcision on little girls. I don't care if they're Muslims, they're American citizens and they have rights. And the judge let them off the hook. And if that doesn't make you enraged, I don't know what does. Amen. Thank you. Women rulers. Quran chapter 33 verse 32 says, O wives of the Prophet, you are not like anyone among the women. If you fear Allah, then do not be soft in speech. Let he in whose heart is disease, lest he in whose heart is disease should covet, but speak with appropriate speech. The Prophet Muhammad said in Bukhari volume 9, book 88, hadith 219, a people who make a woman their ruler will never be successful. So how are you feeling about your Muslim population voting in a woman? Yeah. Bukhari volume 9, book 83, hadith 17. Muhammad says, a Muslim who has admitted that there is no God but Allah and that I am his prophet may not be killed except for 3 reasons: punishment for murder, adultery, or for apostasy. Make no mistake about it, murder is the murder of a Muslim. Adultery is for a married man and a married woman, a married Muslim man and a married Muslim woman to have relations with each other that when they're not married to each other. And for apostasy. So I'm 10 years old, I've learned all of this and then much more about Islam, and I've decided that this can't possibly be true. I can't worship this God. I can't follow in the footsteps of Muhammad. I certainly will not die for them. You see, I was taught to die for them, die for Muhammad, die for Allah. All of the miseries of the Muslim world are because of the West, it's because of the Jews, it's because of America. And it became apparent to me that every single misery that a Muslim goes through is because of following this. It's not because of America, it's not because of the Jews, it's not because of the West. But I couldn't do anything about it because I was 10 years old and I could get killed for saying that I no longer want to be a Muslim, so I let it go. I took off my hijab and it was not a problem because, like I said, my dad's family didn't care. John McCain said, I fell in love with my country when I was a prisoner in someone else's. And I can honestly tell you, the biggest prison for humanity today is being a Muslim or having to be forced to live as a Muslim when you have a Muslim family, a Muslim community. Unfortunately, even here in the United States, in a country that's not yet completely under Sharia, Islamic Sharia. I was 15 years old in that picture. And as you can see, I was wearing a hijab again. It was pink. It's pretty cute. It's not that bad. I could pull it off. Never again will I wear it, though. There are several events that happened in my life, and I'm just going to go through them real quick, that led me to wear the hijab again. Because I was definitely not a believer of Islam at that time. When I was about 12 years old, my dad moved us from Amman, Jordan, to Dubai in the UAE. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Dubai. Okay, yeah. Not so fantastically sweet. When I was in Dubai, my dad decided to actually bring my uncle to live with us. Yeah, so just when I thought that I was out of it, oh no, there's round 2. So I actually tried to commit suicide. And they had to rush me to the hospital. There's 3 pills because there's no guns or anything like that over there. They rushed me to the hospital. I was in a coma for 24 hours. And I pulled through, to my disappointment, to my utter disappointment when I wake up. I was like, oh, crap. It's going to work. But when I came out of it, my mom signed me out of the hospital because my dad didn't want the scandal. The Lord to get me out, even though the doctors said that no, she needs to stay in here. We can't believe she actually made it out of her coma. I was approached by a police officer who was waiting for me outside the hospital. And it was Emirati, a Dubai hospital, a Dubai police officer. My mom went up with me and he said, no, I need to talk to her alone. Super strange. And he says, you're an American citizen. I can take you to the embassy right now. We already recorded it, that you tried to commit suicide. I can take you to the embassy and you can go home. if I wanted one thing at that point was to come back home. And I said, my parents had made up this story that I took too many pills because my tooth was hurting. I was a straight A student. I was in advanced classes. But I took too many pills because my tooth was hurting. You know, the entire box of aspirin and then everything else I could find in the cabinet. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I have 4 siblings. My tooth was hurting. And I just took too much. You see, if I had left with him, then dishonor would have happened to my family, and my siblings and my mother would have had to pay for it. So we had to find another way to make it out to us, because I wasn't going to leave and live in freedom in America and leave my family behind. Something else that happened, so in the Middle East, we're super spiritual, okay? Dreams mean a lot to us, even till this day. It drives my husband nuts. If I have a dream, I call him and I tell him, like, this is what happened, and by the way, I'm not impressed with you. That behavior was not acceptable. So I had a dream when I was about 13 years old, and in my dream I saw a man's face, and from his eyes, from behind his face, came a burning light. Okay, and the best way I can describe it is that when you get a cut and you put rubbing alcohol on it, it burns, but it's a good burn, right? Because you know that it's doing good for you. Well, I was shaking my head left and right. I was trying to get out from this light, and no matter what I did, I could not get out from his light. So I was pretty shaken up when I woke up the next day. I went to my dad. I told him what had happened, and he looked pretty agitated. And if anybody knows anything about domestic abuse, you know that you kind of become in tune with your abuser. It's a survival mechanism. You start to anticipate what they're about to do. And I knew, I honestly thought I was going to get beat pretty bad for it. And I didn't understand why. My dad said, well, you saw Isa. Isa is Jesus. You saw Isa is the Messiah. And in Islam, that means that you're going to be a doctor. Yeah, if it sounds ridiculous to you, it sounded pretty bad to me too. It's like, okie dokie then. I let it go. Okay, I'm not about to argue. I really just was thankful that I didn't get whooped that day. When my dad left, I hid the books. We had at least 2 large books of dream explanations in our house. And if you want a little hint, wolves and owls are bad news. Cancel all your plans, shut your doors, lock your windows. It's not going to work well. So, of course, I hid the books. There was nothing like that mentioned in the books, but I let it go. A little bit later, my parents went into the living room and shut the doors behind them. And of course, I'm an obedient 14-year-old girl. So naturally, I started eavesdropping. And I heard my dad tell my mom that he had gotten a visa to Canada. But he was afraid to take the kids and her, of course, to Canada because he's afraid that we would lose our religion. Okay? First thing I did was look up where Canada was at. It's the frozen part on top. In case you don't know. They say that we lost the War of 1812. I tell my family's Canadian now. I tell them we didn't lose the war. We got up to Canada, figured out we don't want anything frozen, came back. So the next day I woke up, I was like, yeah, I got to remedy this situation. I woke up, I started wearing the hijab. I started to pray 5 times a day. I started to fast again, and I was actually wearing the black dashdasha, okay? And then my dad told us that he wanted to take us to Canada. Progress. He's starting to feel more comfortable with the situation. He said he's still afraid that we're going to lose our religion. So I had to up the ante. All right? I went in and I started researching Islamic schools in Canada. To my surprise, they were actually pretty prominent. The one school that came up loud and clear was by an organization that every single American citizen should know. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. The Islamic Society of North America is tied into terrorist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood. All right? So I went to my dad and I said, Dad, check out this school. They do da'wah. Da'wah is basically evangelism only, instead of the whole, come to Christ and find life. It's come to Islam and one day maybe you'll blow yourself up. Not the best sales pitch, but such is life. Well, as soon as I told him that, his eyes lit up and like a slot machine, he went ding, 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 and ladies and gentlemen, we were on our way to Canada. We got on a plane from Jordan to Amsterdam. We drove in the car from Dubai to Jordan. It means we drove through Saudi Arabia. Not the best drive. It's pretty ugly. And then from Jordan to Amsterdam, we got on a plane in Amsterdam and headed towards Toronto. And while we were over the big blue pond, there was no land to be seen anywhere. We were well into our flight. I saw something that changed me forever. For the first time in my life, instead of seeing my mom beaten down, blue and red, wondering whether she's going to be alive, my mom took off her hijab. And she said to my dad, I don't pray, I don't fast, I'm done. Yeah, I was sitting there going, oh. Because for the first time in my life, my dad could not do anything. And I was watching it since just a change of geography. Look at that change of attitude. It's pretty amazing. Yes. We got into Canada. Unfortunately, the abuse did not stop. My mother was no longer physically abused, but us children still were under the physical abuse. So one day I decided, I was going to counseling, I decided I was going to tell my counselor about the physical abuse that was happening, because I was convinced that my dad was going to kill one of us. And unfortunately, even though we displayed signs of physical abuse at school, nobody reported it. Nobody reported it. And the only thing I can figure is that nobody wanted to offend the Muslim family in the neighborhood. Nobody wanted to say, nobody wanted to be called a racist. So I guess we were an acceptable sacrifice. Because had a black kid, white kid, Hispanic kid, whatever kid that wasn't from a Muslim family displayed the same signs, I guarantee you they would have been reported. Well, there was enough evidence. But before I even say that, I actually was laying down in our basement and I was saying, I said a prayer. I said, God of Christ, if you exist, please get us out of this in one piece. Because the stories I knew too well of cousins, distant cousins, that once they tried to get out from under Islam, once they tried to get out from under their fathers and mothers, they went on vacation to the Middle East and never came back. Or nobody knows where they're at. So I said the prayer. We were scooped up out of our school, and we were taken to one high security shelter to the other. The story is very long of how we got our freedom, but we basically went from being millionaires to losing everything. Overnight, we went from wearing brand name clothes to digging through donation piles, because all we have is the clothes that are on our back. My dad actually took out 2 mortgages on the house, put it in foreclosure. The house we paid for in cash. He maxed out our credit cards, emptied our bank accounts, and tried to kill us also. Then he went to his local mosque, which I was even surprised that he knew where the local mosque was, because this is my dad, who's, I don't even remember him actually ever cracking the Quran open at the house. He went to the mosque on Eid, which is kind of the equivalent of Christians that only go to the church on like Easter and Christmas, and kind of like our Christian by name only. That's the kind of Muslim he was. We also went on Umrah, okay, because that was a trendy thing to do. The Umrah is when you go to do your pilgrimage. I didn't appreciate it because I was about 10 years old and I was fasting, and the day was super long, and we're revolving around this stupid rock, and it's not a nice place to be, all right? I was hungry. I don't like to be hungry. All right, so we got out to safety, and then I actually went to Iraq. I worked with the Joint Task Force as a linguist for 13 months between 2009 and 2010. I turned 20 and 21 in Iraq. It was pretty fun. I was not in the military. I was a DoD contractor, okay, because the National Guard wanted to send me to learn Mandarin. And I said, you know what, 9/11 happened. I was in Dubai. Our cousins called in and said, turn on the TV. And I am certain that each one of you remembers where you were the moment you got the news. So do I. I was with the other side. And I saw the towers come crashing down. I saw the people jumping, and I was devastated. I was 13 years old, and this was supposed to be my safe haven. And I had no doubt in my mind who drove those planes in. My father didn't either. He was in the background dancing, shouting Allahu Akbar, saying, finally, America has fallen. Once he left to celebrate with his buddies all night, I went out to our veranda because we were on the 7th floor. And I looked down, and the cars were coming by honking. They were giving out the celebratory cookies. And Americans everywhere were told, stay hidden. Don't advertise that you're American. So I wanted to go to Iraq. I wanted to be in that war ever since I was 13 years old. Well, the National Guard didn't want to send me, so I found another way around them. I went to Iraq, and from there, of course, I was a daughter of the world. I flirted with the idea of Christianity, went to some churches, but I didn't ever really want to commit to Jesus Christ, even though on some level I knew his divinity because I've met him firsthand. But Christians have not displayed anything but being doormats, rolling over, all for diversity and multiculturalism, which I was not for whatsoever. I paid a big price for multiculturalism, and I just couldn't follow this Jesus that they talk about. He's the Son of God, okay, whatever. But I'm not going to follow him. Till one day, actually, my friends were over, we were having fun, and I drank, I smoked, and I had boyfriends. And one of my friends, Amy, said, Vera, have you ever tried cocaine? I said, no, I haven't. She said, well, I have some. Do you want some? For a second, I really considered it. I'd be a liar if I told you that I didn't. And then I said, no, I don't want any. No, thank you. I've already had a bunch of addictions. I didn't need to add another one. And Amy looks at me, and I kid you not, this is what she said. Well, you know what they say, you should always try something once. Yeah, that was her pitch. I said, Amy, I think when people say that, they mean sushi. Bungee jumping. Maybe the thing where you go swim with the sharks. I don't think crack cocaine is something you should try once. But that night, after a lot of drinking, I actually fell on my face. You could argue that I was too drunk, and I fell. But I was also in with so much despair, because I knew, and I cried out to God, if you don't save me, I am going to die. Because the next couple of times, I'm not going to be able to say no. I know myself. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to partake. And I don't know where that road is going to lead, except in a ditch. The next morning when I woke up, I heard the word seminary in my ear. I know, some of you think I'm schizo. I'm okay with that. My mental illness has made me a much better person. What has yours done? Yeah. Thank you. So I went and I Googled seminary because, my Christian vocabulary was pretty much lacking pretty bad. Turns out it was Bible school. Guess who I called? My mother, who at this point was not just a Christian. She was the one the pastor had to kick out of the church every day and be like, okay, we're done. Everybody's gone. You have no more people to feed and no more people to say hi to. I called her up. I said, Mom, I'm going to seminary. That was the delivery, too. It was very impressive. And she said, oh, honey, you can't go to seminary. You drink and you smoke and you have sex outside of marriage. They won't let you in. I was appalled, deeply hurt. I said, what happened to turn the other cheek and accept everybody? She goes, well, listen, why don't you go to church? Commit to going to a church. Try a small group. See if it's your thing. And then, if that's your thing, I will help you apply and get to seminary. I can do it. I can go to church. No problem. Start going to church. Yeah, it was hilarious. I was walking in after I already had a few beers into my small group, which was every Sunday night, smelling like cigarettes, wearing my Harley jacket because I had a motorcycle. So yeah. Hey, at least it was a Harley. Okay. And here I I'm talking to this small group, and there's this one guy in the small group, and bless their hearts, they tolerated me so much. And one guy in this small group had made it pretty clear that he doesn't care for me at all. He had a few choice words. And one day I needed some help in the place that I was living, and he actually volunteered. I didn't ask for help, he just knew that I needed that help. He volunteered to do the work. So, started talking to this guy, and they're talking about how I'm not a Christian. Not really. I just go to church. And he's asking why. Why are you going to church if you're not a Christian? So I told him why I couldn't follow Christ. I told him that he basically wants us to be doormats. And he goes, I don't know who you're talking about, but that's not the Jesus that I know. The Jesus that I know turned over tables, cracked the whip. He called people you children of snakes, you children of the devil. He wasn't afraid to offend people telling the truth. I never heard this before. I said, whoa. That guy I could follow. I fell completely in love with Christ. Totally and completely. And honestly, John chapter 8, verse 36 says, if the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. That's right. Is what has saved my life, because on my way to accepting Christ, which I did on November 1st of 2015, my addictions fell out of my life. I can't tell you how it happened. It's actually a miracle. And my act has been cleaned up. My attitude has been cleaned up. And the guy who thought that he could not stand me is now my husband, and he's sitting right there. Sorry, I'm going over the time now. I'm wrapping it up, I promise. We actually got married. And I accepted Christ November 1st of 2015, called up my mom a couple of days later, said, Mom, I accepted Christ, which was a huge deal for us because I'm the oldest of 5 and I was the last one to do so. And my mom started crying on the phone. Now, honestly, I thought when I told her this, she was going to start going, like that. Not what happened. I said, what's going on? She goes, well, I denied Christ on November 1st. When I went into that mosque. And she just felt like this was the completion. This was God saying, I forgive you, that you have been forgiven, the slate has been wiped clean, that you and your children are mine now, and you're under my grace and my mercy. 5 days after I accepted Christ, I made a little video about Islam that went viral. Now, if you remember, my dad went to a local mosque, got a fatwa, a judgment on our lives for leaving Islam. We can officially get killed. Not that he needed a judgment because it's Islamic law, but he got a fatwa on our lives, so I was literally in hiding. I don't know why I made that video about Islam, but I did. I have a temper problem. The Lord's working on me. And since then, I can tell you, people started calling saying, hey, get on a radio show, we want to talk to you, we want to interview you. So I was told that when you have a problem as a Christian, you need to pray. So I started praying. I said, Lord, you know that my dad's trying to kill me. I can't have my name out there. Prudence is not actually my real last name. Okay, my first name is Farah, though. I can't be out there. This is dangerous. And I heard back from the Lord. Heard it. Go and tell them the wonders I've done. And I said, okay, this is the part where I'm obedient. Yes, Lord, I'll do that. Have you considered what I said? Well, I want to tell you about the wonders that he's done. Not only am I 30 years old, I have been out of Islam and in his grace, and I have been living free. As an American citizen, I'm back home, and I'm in an extremely healthy relationship when the world tells me that I should be another statistic, another abused woman. Not just that, but when the doctors have told me that there's no way I could get pregnant because of the scarring, because of your uterus is upside down or something or the other, the Lord said, watch this. And he gave me that bundle of joy. That's Anna. We named her after the grace that the Lord has both bestowed on me and on her father. And I go out and I speak to American citizens. And that's my daughter, Marcia. She's 1.5 years. We don't even go to a Pentecostal church.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my daughter. Her mother, back in the corner, and if I really feel the spirit, this is where my hands are. So I have no idea where she got this from. Yes, yes, she goes wild in the aisles. It's fantastic. So I started an organization called Free the Captive. Our aim is twofold. One, to free Muslims from the captivity of Islam, right? It's to bring Ishmael home. Two, it is to free American citizens and people around the world who are not Muslims from the misinformation and the lies that is put forth on them by the Islamic law, by the Islamic organizations. This is what I'm doing. You can visit us at freethecaptive.org. I'm a complete volunteer in this organization. Every penny that the ministry gets goes towards the ministry. We have a great project that we're trying to push off. It's called Exodus. I'm not going to give you some more information on it. We're guarding it right now because we know care is going to come down our throats the minute the details are announced. We want to introduce bills into Congress that ban FGM, ban female genital mutilation. That's what FGM is. We want to introduce bills that keep girls safe so that when they are taken into airports to be shipped overseas to have female genital mutilation or forced marriage, they can have something they can tell the TSA officers, at which point they are held and not allowed to leave the country, because Muslim girls who leave the country can't make it back in. They take their passports, and those are American citizens, and I believe that we all have rights given from God, whether you're Muslim or not. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. We're going to take a few minutes for a break. After the break, we're going to go through Islam versus Christianity and Islam and the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
Hello? Hi. Before we take a break, I would like to give a thank you to Tammy and Diane for helping to organize this event, and also to Karen and Charlie, Tim, Joyce, and Randy, and other people who helped tonight in the various capacities. We're so grateful to Kristen Reiner for opening the building for us tonight. And she's working on her night off. And as you leave tonight, after the presentation, the ushers will be at the door to receive the free will offering toward Farah's expenses, which are $550 for this event. We appreciate your generosity. Also, be sure to stop back at Farah's ministry table in the back. And we will take a 10-minute break. After